A very good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today for another behind the scenes interview series. So I'm super delighted to be sitting down with Peter Shanks today for this conversation. And Peter and I go back a long way. I had the pleasure of working with him during my time at Silversea, so this feels both professional and personal. Many of you, especially those joining us from UK market, will know Peter from his time as managing director of Silversea Cruises in UK and Ireland, where he led the company through an important period of growth and evolution. And he has also spent decades in the cruise industry. So few people have the breadth of experience he brings, from leadership and brand development to navigating industry changes at the highest level. So I'm very much looking forward today to talking to Peter about his experience in the industry and his passion for expedition cruising and what has changed since he retired from Silversea, as well as his recent trip to Antarctica that I'm sure all of you have heard about or read about in our blog and also seen it discussed in the Explore Earth blog post. So Peter, it's really great to have you. Thank you so much for joining me.
You're welcome. It's lovely to stay connected to the industry. I'm not playing golf today, so I'm available to do other things.
Brilliant.
But it's nice to stay connected to everybody. I hope everyone's well. I hope sales are good. Of course, these days I only know about sales from what I read in the trade press. I've never really believed that, so I'm not really clear on how sales are going. But I hope sales are going well for everyone. What I do know is that the top end of the cruise market and expedition are going gangbusters, which is great. And anything I can do to help share my experiences at Aquila, I'm happy to help.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Peter. Let's start a little bit this conversation perhaps by going back to your career and just talking a little bit how did it all started, what were the changes that had most profound impact on the sector in your opinion, and anything else you'd like to share.
Well, I was in the travel industry for 45 years, but I found cruise when I joined Cunard back in 2002, I think. And of course, in those days, cruising was beginning to get popular. Clear was just about taking off. In the old days, it used to be called, I think, the PSA. And expedition was unknown. I knew nothing about expedition and the expedition sector. There were probably a few ships bobbing around, but to look forward now to where expedition is at, I remember a few years ago, probably 10 years ago, I stood up at a Clear conference and said, "This is the year of expedition." And I got told off by all the big nasty cruise lines for daring to say that expedition was special. Although my time at Cunard, the one thing we had and they still have is the transatlantic crossing. And in some ways that is a similar, it's a journey, it's an experience, it's not a cruise. And I got really motivated by the transatlantic crossing. It was my favorite part of the Cunard experience. In the same way that whilst Silversea has been a wonderful brand with all their ships, when I arrived at Silversea, I was so surprised at expedition. I just did not understand how special it was and what the opportunity was. So over the past few years with my friends at Silversea, I've done my bit to try and grow expedition as you are now, Aquila. But I've been so surprised. And then I went on my first expedition to Galapagos. Leslie and I spent 2 weeks in Galapagos on the Silver Origin, and wow, that just really built my passion for all that you can get out of a holiday that's just magnificent. It's actually very hard to explain to anyone who hasn't been how special it is.
So because obviously, it probably same applies to me because when I started at Silversea many years ago, I also didn't know what expedition cruising was, and I was sort of thrown into the deep end, having to sell that type of travel without necessarily understanding fully. And I remember Conrad coming to the office and sort of, talking about these remote lands and creatures living on them and so on. So, and I probably imagine you had similar experience when you joined Silversea and you sort of knew about this product. And when you arrived to Galapagos, what stood out? What was sort of, okay, now I get it, moment from that first expedition cruise experience that you had?
I think there are many things in life that once you experience it, I mean, as an aside, about 10 years ago, I was in Calgary and I did the Olympic bobsleigh runs in a bobsleigh.
Okay.
And if you try to explain to someone what a bobsleigh, it's very topical given the Winter Olympics, try to explain to someone what that experience is like versus actually doing it, there's such a gap. So
Yeah.
when you go out and experience Antarctica or Galapagos and you have a day and it's wonderful and zodiacs and animals and wildlife and all that excitement, it's just fulfilling, I think, is one of the words. It's
Mm.
immensely fulfilling for the guest. And in turn, it then to become an immensely fulfilling opportunity for travel agents because their customers will come back so delighted with what they recommended to them. And of course, as I always say, it's a reassuringly expensive holiday, which leads to a wonderful business opportunity for travel agents. So it's amazing how much coverage there is today.
Yeah.
You know, you and I were talking earlier about Jane McDonald's been down there, Julia Bradbury's going with, I think, the BBC. Everyone talking about penguins. There are photos, social media. It's really wonderful that the awareness of this thing has never been higher. It's perfect for travel agents because it helps them just flip that conversation about have you ever thought of going to Antarctica?
Mm.
And the awareness will be much higher than it's ever been.
It's quite interesting because I only attended Destination Show in London for one day. So, for those of us, for those of you joining us from States or wherever else, Destinations is probably the largest consumer show in UK. It was fascinating to see almost 50% of exhibitors having to do something with expedition cruising, and expedition cruise operators who had stands, their stands absolutely buzzing, and team members reporting that people really knew what they're going for, knowing as well the price point, not being surprised. And I remember attending these shows myself and trying to sort of put the places on the map first, and then explaining the cost and what it means and why it's so expensive and so on. So um, talking about the cost, being a consumer, travel and so on, because you recently came back from Antarctica trip, and this time round you got to experience Antarctica and South Georgia and Falklands on a longer itinerary. And you traveled as a guest, so with no longer, wearing your managing director hat and so on. So what was different? Was anything different from a point of view of experiencing it as a guest without the pressures of being also as a responsible leader of an organization?
Well,
Or,
I had a
yeah,
sense I had a sense of freedom,
okay,
you know, because throughout my career in cruise, I've always been one that's focused on what's happening on board the ship, and I need to help and look out, that's not working, I need to intervene, or I need to help that guest put their life belt on properly, or whatever. I've always felt I've been at work, whereas this time I was free. And it was Leslie and I experiencing Antarctica as a guest. And I felt part of the guest community because
okay,
all the people who go on a cruise to Antarctica, they have all done a lot of research. I would reckon 2/3 or more of the guests on the ship had read South by Shackleton. They read the book.
okay.
They're incredibly knowledgeable. And of course, there were, as we can chat later on, there were some people who'd arrived quite unprepared for what they would be doing. But you're with a group of people, and you're sitting in the Explorer Lounge in the evening, and the expedition leader's about to tell you where you're going tomorrow. What is the weather like? And you're all together, and you're as one really. And there's that tremendous sense of camaraderie that you're all experiencing this together as guests. And that was a really wonderful thing.
And were you a little bit more critical of the experience, less critical in comparison to, when you were working for Silversea? Or did you
No,
sort of
I
have a new
think
set of eyes, or conversations you were having with people? Were they different or
I
still?
think I think it doesn't matter who you go with.
Mm,
You can go with HX, Silversea, you can go with the more midstream. It doesn't matter who you go with. The experience of standing in front of 250,000 penguins in South
mm,
Georgia, or standing in Elephant Island where Shackleton took his 24 men and left them there safely for 3 months, or seeing penguins in Antarctica and all the iceberg. It doesn't matter which ship you're on or which cruise line you're with, that experience is the same. So there's such a wide range of cruise lines to choose from.
mm,
I think the most important thing is the size of the ship. So please don't send anyone to Antarctica on Holland America or Princess on a drive-by cruise. That is not a good thing to do for them or for your bottom line. Now, there will be some people, of course, it's the only way they could afford it. But
Yep.
imagine approaching that area and not being able to get off.
Mm.
And then secondly, if you go with ships that are sort of around 200 passengers, then you can quite happily have two landings a day. Whereas if you go with ships that might be nearer 500 passengers, you may be limited in the number of times you can go ashore. So I think really getting yourself up to speed with what the different ships are in terms of size and how it affects the experience is the important bit. Whether it's an ultra luxury ship like Silversea
Mm.
or a different cruise line, you know how to explain that. It's no difference the difference between staying at the Four Seasons or at a Sandals. You can explain the difference in the quality,
Mm.
but be really good at training and learning from your cruise line operators. What is the difference in the terms of the size of the ship and how that leads to how many times you get off the ship and that small ship experience. So that's a really important thing to do.
I think as well, I often think when I think about places like Antarctica, for many people, it will be once in a lifetime experience. There are very few people who return on multiple occasions. So, and it is one of the places that, to a degree, will deliver every time because the place is so astonishing. So, sometimes, in addition to understanding the different sizes of the ships or what is possible to do on these ships, it's also understanding the rest of it, how often people want to be off, what the budgets are, and so on. Because regardless who they're going to travel with, I think they will be very much impressed. And then those sort of other differences probably will come into play if you get opportunities, like some of us that were lucky people to experience it more than
I
one
mean,
time in the life.
it was the second time I went because I was lucky
Yeah,
enough to go
yeah.
down when we launched Silver Endeavour, and I went on my own, not with Leslie, and it was a wonderful trip. It was a short trip, and we just went to the peninsula for 5 days. Without any question in my mind, if your guests can afford it and they have the time, do the full long journey with South
Yep.
Georgia, the Falklands, and the peninsula for a couple of good reasons. The first thing is if you're going to go that far, and it's a long way to go to Santiago and then fly down to Ushuaia or Puerto Williams, it's a long journey. So
Mm.
you're going to go all that way, you might as well make the most of it while you're down there. And second, and also a couple of things, the weather.
Mm.
So what I realized again this time, particularly doing the longer journey, we had an 18-night cruise, is that the weather is all important. And in
Mm.
fact, we were slightly delayed leaving Puerto Williams, and as a result, they reversed the itinerary. So we
Yep.
were originally due to go to the Falkland Islands first, but we went the other way around, which actually turned out brilliantly for the weather. But if you go for a long journey, an 18-nighter, it's very likely that at some point the weather will change. They'll have to slightly change where you're going on which day. You've got flexibility because you're there for
Mm.
18 days. If you go on a short, even a 6-night is the shortest one, or a 10-night, you haven't got a lot of flexibility if you lose a
Mm.
few days for weather. So that's another good reason to do the whole lot. And then we can go on to talk, Akvila, about the Shackleton experience
Mm.
and the different experience in South Georgia versus Antarctica Peninsula, because they're very special.
How?
Well, firstly, let's tackle Shackleton.
Let's do that.
His expedition was a complete and absolute failure.
Yeah.
But the way in which he rescued 28 men and brought them back alive is one of the greatest expeditions, greatest things man has ever done in terms of expedition
Mm.
travel. And we were lucky in that we were in the Weddell Sea where his
Mm.
ship Endurance sunk.
Okay.
Then we went to Elephant Island
Mm-hmm.
where he went in, I think, 4 rowing boats, so no bigger than a big rowing boat, with his men, and he found Elephant Island and he left his men. We went there, we saw the place where he landed.
Mm.
Then we traveled on the 800 miles from Elephant Island to South Georgia, and we had quite rough seas for a day and a
Mm.
half. But we were having scrambled egg for breakfast and living in a lovely ship, and it was beautiful. He was in a rowing boat.
Yep.
And he went that 800 mile. We went on the same journey. We arrived in South Georgia at the same place he did. And we landed. And then we also went to Grytviken, and I walked up to the waterfall where he came down from the mountains, and we retraced his footsteps. And then we also went to his grave because he subsequently passed away in Antarctica.
Mm.
And the whole ship was buzzing about Shackleton. So whilst the guys on the call may not know enough about Shackleton, make sure you learn about Shackleton, read the book, because all the guests who book with you will know and want to know about the Shackleton experience. And so if you just do the peninsula, you do nothing to do with Shackleton. And then the other thing is South Georgia, Agvilla. I know it's one of your favorite places on earth. It's astounding.
Mm.
It is astounding, whether it's the 250,000 penguin colony or the fur seals and the elephant seals and the beach masters on the beach fighting each other. But the scenery is incredible, just emotion, almost in tears when you stand there and see this incredible scenery. And it's a very different experience to what you had in Antarctica. And then you can go and do the whole Falkland experience and learn about the battles. We hiked up Mount Tumbledown to where the Scots Guards had the famous battle to free Port Stanley, and then I had a pint of Iron Lady in the pub
Okay.
next to Mrs. Thatcher's wonderful Mrs. Thatcher's statue, and that was a different experience altogether. And the Falklands Islands was nothing like I thought it would be. It was beautiful, it was friendly, it was full of history. So on that long trip, we did everything. Now,
Yep.
if you only can have the time or the money to do just the Antarctic Peninsula, a couple of days out Drake Passage, six days in the Antarctica, and come back, your guests will have a fantastic time. But they're only going to go there once. And from a business perspective and from their perspective, I would certainly recommend they do the longer trip.
And I remember not necessarily just before this call, but we were chatting another day about how, you know, traveling now as a traveler and sort of, you know, seeing the place as a traveler without the pressure of being a team member of an expedition cruise operator. You thought that sometimes in the industry we don't talk to the clients the way we should be talking, or how they, you know, how we market the expedition cruising to the travelers. Would you like to tell a little bit more about that? Because I think it's a quite interesting idea and something that for sure travel advisors could pick up some thoughts and ideas how to do it better.
Well, there's a couple of things in terms
Mm,
of getting your knowledge up to speed on
yeah,
how to best sell an expedition. To me, it's all about the detail. It's
yeah,
all about what do I wear and how do I get onto a Zodiac. And you
mm,
get onto you see these poor people who have clearly been given a lovely big rucksack
yeah,
and a water bottle, and they come out for their first trip ashore with so many clothes on. You're kidding, aren't you? With a
mm,
rucksack full of things.
yeah,
And then they get in the Zodiac and they're ashore for an hour and a half. On the second day, they don't even take a water bottle because they've sussed out that you don't need any of those things. You just need your wonderful kit you get provided with. If you have
mm,
a big camera, then sure, take your rucksack to keep the camera protected. So if at the get-go you can learn the advice of the tips
mm,
as to how everything works and how to get the best out of it, and how a Zodiac works, and what do I wear, and what book should I read in advance, and then also what flight should I take.
yep,
So should I go with Iberia via Madrid to Santiago because it's a lot cheaper than BA direct from Heathrow? Should I spend an extra night in Santiago? Yes, you should. So you've got 2 nights there
mm,
in case you have you need some flexibility. Which hotel should I stay at in Santiago? What should I do while I'm in Santiago? Those things are really important,
mm,
and it will stand you in really good stead because you know all the detail. You don't need to tell them about penguins, whales, icebergs. They know all about that. That's why they're going.
mm,
You just need to tell them about the difference, and therefore talk to them in that way. Don't, whatever you do, start promoting Antarctica based on price,
mm,
because you don't need to do that. It's roughly £1,000 a day per person. So if you're going for 10 days, it's going to cost you 10 grand plus the flights. If you're going for 18 days, it's going to cost you 18 grand plus the flights. All the guests who come to you will know that. They'll have researched it. So the price conversation comes way down the line. And the only question you ask about price, the only difference it makes to price is, do you want business class or not? And most people do.
mm.
So that's where I get to the reassuringly expensive, because people are thinking about going to Antarctica knowing
Hmm.
this is a very significant investment. What they want is the recommendation and the confidence.
Hmm.
They don't need it. They don't need a discount. They don't need a cheap price. Most people.
Most people, and I think it's also in this particular case as well. It's quite important then, from a point of view of acquiring the knowledge. It's not necessarily well. I do think you do need to understand what Antarctica is, which season, which month is best for what purposes, and for those who are very budget minded but are not necessarily so interested in specifically seeing a particular activity, can also consider maybe going a little bit early in the season, a little bit later. But it's also very important to understand the differences between the operators that are available, because some people will not care too much about the comfort levels on board the ship, but will be very keen to spend as much time ashore as possible. Whereas you will have the others who will be okay to sometimes not get ashore and just sort of see the Antarctica from from the comfort of the chair in the bar area. So
Yeah. So I mean,
there's a company for everybody, and I
it
suppose yeah,
it's very interesting. I mean, everybody wants to go ashore. I
yeah,
didn't see
of course,
anyone,
yeah.
everybody wants to go ashore because that's the highlight. And they're very, I guess I should say that the heroes of the piece
Mm.
are the expedition team members.
Yeah.
The expedition team leader is incredible because they have to make such important decisions on
Mm.
safety and weather
Mm.
and where the ship is going. They'll all talk about having plan A, B, C, D, E, F, and onwards. And each evening it's quite good fun because you sit with the expedition leader who will show you the weather maps,
Mm.
tell you that we're hoping to go here, but it might have to be over here. And then whatever step you take ashore, there is an expedition team member almost on your shoulder who'll be looking after you, telling you to keep out of the way of the fur seals because they're trying to find the right area that's theirs for when all the mating starts, and you don't want to get mated by a fur seal, that's for sure. So the expedition team members are incredible people, full of knowledge. When you're out on a Zodiac, they will be the first people that spot the blowhole of a whale.
Mm.
And they will turn the engine off, and you'll all sit there and they'll tell you when it's about to reappear. They'll be the ones that notice the different birds. They'll talk you through all the different penguins, where they're sitting, how they're building their eggs. They show you the most amazing things. And that is probably one of the most special things about an expedition from all expedition cruise lines, is that the expedition team members are the ones that look after you and deliver that magic.
So I will throw this question to you because it's something that we very often hear in the sector, that various companies will talk about how incredible the expedition teams are. I personally think that most of the people working in the sector, if they get to that job, most of them are brilliant. I'm yet to encounter somebody completely rubbish at the job, and I think these usually get sussed out very quickly. So, and in a destination like Antarctica, where I think I counted once 26 different expedition cruise operators, some of them operating multiple ships, and in a destination that is incredibly restricted because there's only that many things you can do on board the ship, because there's regulations where you can go, how many people can be ashore. You have your scheduler that teams need to complete well ahead of the time. And then, of course, the weather that ruins every single plan you had. And then you go to plan B, C, D, E, F, G. I can imagine that it is quite difficult both for travel advisors and for consumers to understand often the minuscule differences between the different brands. With your experience, both as a leader of an expedition cruise operator and also as a guest, what do you think matters most for the traveler? Or what should be, so, you're traveling to Antarctica for the very first time in your life. It's probably going to be the only time you're going to go there. What do you think matters most apart from price and
The ability to get ashore as often as you can.
yeah,
And that's where the size of ship comes into
yeah,
play.
yeah.
And also, like all good travel advisors, I'm sure in any range you sell,
Mm.
you'll focus on a small number of operators to really build your knowledge. And you'll have the ability to say, this is the one we're working with very closely at the value end of the market. This is the one we're working very closely. Someone like, I mean, HX are a pretty good value, I have to say. If you look at HX's value proposition, and even Viking have a very good value proposition. So you could choose an operator like that for your mainstream, if you like, your value proposition. Then you might want to go, well, I've got your Silversea, who are probably best at it in my humble opinion, because they've been doing it now for a long time, Aquila. That could be your choice to really focus on ultra luxury. But don't start with the ultra luxury piece. It's just that if you've got the money, then you might as well afford to do it in luxury, because the food will be better, the service will be better, the wine will be better, there'll be better facilities on the ship. And then maybe somebody like Quark, who are more of a, I think that they've been at it for a long time as well. They have smaller ships and they're very good at what they do, and they have some slightly different experiences as a specialist. So maybe focus on half a dozen and build the relationship with those cruise lines, so that when your guests talk to you about the differences, you've got a range of ones to talk about. And I think that's the trick, to not try and be everything to everybody. And present the customer with a small informed choice.
And having led Silversea for many years here in UK, what do you think, and especially talking about ultra luxury segment, because that's probably what, to a degree, we both know very well. What, in your opinion, works best to attract new ultra luxury clients to expedition cruising? In terms of even if we think about marketing or events, what has worked for some of the companies you worked with that you'd like to share?
One of the things that definitely works most powerfully is word of mouth. So when Leslie and I went, the ability you have to share the most amazing WhatsApps and pictures to your friends. I've got several of my friends now who want to go purely because of word of mouth and penguins, and you enthuse about the experience when you meet them. So if you've got a guest who's already been or going, then work with them, because word of mouth and a lot of the cruise lines will offer recommend a friend type promotions as well. So if you've got a client who's already hooked, see if you can leverage that to get more of their friends and more of their like-minded people to do so. And then probably obvious is to look at your database of clients and work out who are the people who like to be active, because it's a very active holiday. Who are the people who can afford it? So they might be spending £1,000 a day, but going to the Sani resort in Greece, or they might be spending thousands of pounds with Audley and going on safaris to Africa. Those are people who want similar experiences. And then talk to them about it. So you'll have a lot more success of finding 5, 10, 15 customers who you believe are in the market for it, and talk to them first, than a more of a blanket sort of email or direct marketing shot to your full database. Because this is a niche product at the end of the day. Let's remember, it's a small product. So focus your efforts where you think, and social media is fantastic because of the ability to show videos, TikToks and all the rest of it. Because I can't think of a destination that lends itself more to social media and video content and some of these amazing images. But keep it quite tight as to who you're talking to, because those are the customers that you might, and it might take you a long time to convert them. It's not the sort of, I'm going to make a decision today to go next month to Antarctica type of decision. If you're selling Antarctica today, you'd be talking about next winter or the following winter. It's not a late booking destination.
Absolutely. And it's been interesting, because last year I held a workshop with some of the leading tour operators in UK, and we specifically talked about Antarctica and how actually it really should remain a very sort of a destination that you book well in advance, which I think the trend is going towards there, because the last minute deals do not help anyone. Everybody wants to make money out of it, and the more people book in advance, the the fewer the places will be available to sell last minute deals. And that, actually giving something extra is definitely a much better incentive as discounting in comparison to discounting. And also, talking about Antarctica becoming popular, and you already, we already chatted about the screen love it's getting these days. The Jane McDonald show here in UK, Will Smith, who traveled on Ponan from pole to pole and has been, I think the show is being shown on Disney. We have the Julia Bradbury and ITV with HX. I think there was
Listen,
actually even Silversea. Yep,
I had
Silversea. Yeah.
I had 6,000 people looking at my live news reports.
Oh wow,
So
brilliant!
you are looking at an influencer these days, Akvila.
Absolutely, I know. I absolutely know, and
But
I think you should be. Yes.
I'd book the cruise early,
Yeah.
and then bring in the choice of airfares 10, 11, 12 months before when they become available, and keep your eye on the BA, because BA have incredibly expensive fares, then they have their sale.
Yeah.
So if you've got the cruise booked, and you can do the BA sale, but you can also get really good fares on business class from Iberia via Madrid, or KLM versus Amsterdam, or Air France through Paris. So you can I'd slot in the cruise booking a year, 2 years in advance, because that's what people want to look forward to. Then you can bring the airfare in when it's released within 10 to 12 months of departure.
Absolutely. And with Antarctica sort of having this huge attention these days, do you think it will remain the expedition cruise destination, or new regions will become a little bit more popular as well?
I think let's not forget about Galapagos. So Galapagos tends to be, people often don't talk about Galapagos as an expedition. They talk about it as Galapagos.
Yeah.
But it's the same thing. It's an incredible active adventure destination, and it's a brilliant experience. And then of course you've got the Arctic, which is different. I haven't been there yet. I'm hoping to go this year. Leslie and I are hoping to go there this year. And then you can do other expeditions around the world. They're called warm water cruising, where expedition ships are repositioned from the North Pole to the South Pole, or vice versa, and you can find different destinations of the world. But when you look at those, that tends to be people who they've done Antarctica, they've done Arctic, they may have done Galapagos, they're hooked on the expedition experience, the experience of being somewhere every day and getting involved with nature and wildlife. So that comes later. But Antarctica is probably the one to focus on, because it's the biggest destination in expedition cruising. It's very topical, and it's very protected. I think, is it about 100,000 guests a year go there? Akvila, is that about the number?
A little bit more, but also there is a difference because IATO accounts as well those who come on board the larger ships that don't land. So I think if you take these into consideration, it's more than 100,000. On expedition ships, probably around 80%, with US market being top market, and I think China, UK, Germany, Australia.
So we were on the ship for 18 days.
Yeah.
And I saw one ship in the Falklands, other ship, and I caught sight of the Silver Endeavour through my binoculars.
Okay.
Otherwise, in 18 days, we did not see another ship. So, it is definitely an experience where it's so well managed that don't worry that you're going to suddenly turn up when there's a queue of ships waiting to get to land in South Georgia. That's not going to happen. It's still a remote destination with very few people and ships going down there.
And if you had to choose, or like, what would be your recommendation? Should people send, somebody just shows up and says, I just want to try expedition cruising because I heard so many great things about it. Would you recommend Galapagos first as a first expedition, or Antarctica?
I have to come off the fence and say that, to me, Galapagos was the most special experience.
Okay.
We were just shocked at the abundance of and variety of wildlife. Each day it's something different, and when you do see the wildlife, you see thousands of it or them, and you're within touching distance of them all. So and it's a very active holiday, because every day you're snorkeling, you're hiking. Antarctica, particularly if you go on the long days, 18-night cruise, you have to remember you've got quite a lot of sea days. And
Yeah.
it comes with, we were fine actually, but it does come with having a couple of bumpy days as well. Whereas Galapagos is just full on knackering, all out expeditioning. So it's a wonderful, wonderful place to go.
So you'd say probably baby Galapagos.
Yeah, we did an expedition around South Africa. That was cool
Okay,
because you see all the best bits of South Africa as you go around. And I've done a few days on one of the British Isles expeditions, which are on our doorstep. So
absolutely.
find someone who's just saying, look, we're quite active, but we don't want to fly all the way to South America to try one of these expedition cruises. Well, good, go and get on in Portsmouth and get off in Edinburgh, or you can do that. You'll still get an expedition experience. You'll still be in zodiacs, seeing the
Mm.
most beautiful parts of the British Isles and seeing bird life and all that good stuff. So you can do it close to home.
And
And just so one other thing I
yeah,
think of in terms of your question about how do you sell it to people who there are people who go on expeditions who would not be seen ever on a big cruise ship.
yes,
And there's probably quite a correlation between people who don't want to go on a cruise and people who go to Antarctica, because it's all about the destination. You can't drive yourself around Antarctica in your hire car. You
yep,
have to go on a ship. But it's not really a cruise, Aquila. It's a journey, it's an experience, and you can only do it by ship.
absolutely. And speaking about, because obviously Silversea is one of the companies that has both ocean-going ships and expedition fleet, as some other members in the Expedition Cruise Network. One of the things I often get asked is how do many ocean cruises join expedition ships and vice versa?
No,
From
I would
your
answer
sort
that
of,
by I was on. I'm not allowed to give any secrets away.
okay,
But if you do a massive
okay,
if you do a
yes,
massive direct marketing to all your
yeah,
ocean cruise guests to find expedition, you'll get very few people doing it. You have to work hard to select people on your database you think might be in the right area
yeah,
and go to a very tailored section of it.
yeah,
There isn't a big crossover, if I'm honest, between people who love going to the Mediterranean and the Caribbean
mm,
who then want to go to Antarctica. So these are adventurous people. They're
yeah.
knowledgeable people. They've read about the destination. They're on a journey. They want to experience the whole Shackleton experience. They're knowledgeable. It's a different bunch of people.
It's interesting because I think it's very much consistent with what I heard from other brands that in a similar disposition as Silversea. So it's quite consistent. However, I think as well, expedition cruising was often cited as a way for new cruisers to enter the market as well, because they may not necessarily like the idea of going anywhere on board the ship, but because they realize that that's the only way to go to places like Antarctica, like Galapagos, they actually warm themselves to the idea because they have an amazing experience, and they may eventually decide to try a more leisurely ocean going
No, I think
ship.
I think a lot of them will be bored with
Yeah.
schlepping around the Mediterranean. So
Okay.
I think it's a different audience.
Yeah.
It's horses for courses.
And do you think expedition cruising can be possible in places like Mediterranean? Would there be an appeal?
Um, Not really, not in the true sense of the word. I think what's happening in that market is
Mm,
different, especially the ultra luxury cruise lines. They're creating more special experiences like Silversea's Salt program,
okay.
or like what Regent are doing with Grand Prix around Europe.
Okay.
They're doing a good job at creating different uplifting experiences that fit the Mediterranean, for example. But I don't think you could really create a good expedition, a true expedition around the Mediterranean. There are too many people who get in the way.
Yeah.
You'll take your Zodiac into a beautiful cove to be surrounded by an excursion that's just come out of the local port. So, I not a true expedition, no, Aquila. I think it's these far out destinations, and there are plenty of them yet that could be added around the world. They're the ones where expeditions will flourish and grow.
So beside the Arctic, where you're hoping to go this year, um, are there any other places that you would love to visit on an expedition ship?
Well, I'm quite interested in working out how to do the whole northern Norway, Northern Lights piece, and when to go, what time of year, and going to lots of small ports. That would be quite interesting.
No,
Um,
HX is your brand for that.
yeah,
And
yeah,
I
I
would highly
imagine. Yeah, it
recommend,
would
yes,
be
it's
those,
yeah.
because I think personally, we're into active holidays.
Okay, yep.
So we like going on holidays where you can go walking, hiking, zodiacking, interesting, go to a bit of a talk about something interesting, stretch your mind a little bit. And then also when it's beer o'clock, you can relax and enjoy yourself at the same time. But we're into sort of active walking,
Yep.
farmhouses in Northumberland. And I think that's what an expedition type of customer is doing, lots of different things, of which on their bucket list, they're hearing all this noise now about Antarctica. They're reading about it, seeing
Mm,
it. And therefore, it's quite an easy intro for a travel advisor
mm.
to start suggesting to their guests, hey, you need to start thinking about Antarctica because you haven't been there yet. I mean, it's time to go.
It's time to go for sure. Yes, I could not agree more. And probably the last question, from your, cumulative experience as a traveler, as a leader in the industry, what would be your number one advice for those travel advisors who are quite new to selling expedition cruising to help them jump on this incredible journey of selling this incredible travel product?
I think it's about focus and knowledge. So if you're a team of six in a shop somewhere around the UK, don't try and get all six of you to learn about expedition. Find a champion who
Mm,
then works with yourselves, works with Clear, works with and builds that champion, builds up their knowledge on all the detail, and therefore becomes the expert. What's coming at us now with this AI thing that I'm
mm,
probably too old to understand what's going on with AI, but AI will influence our business going forward, but it will never replace the human touch. And therefore, you can now go into searching and you get all this stuff that comes up. Most of it's not true. And
mm,
therefore, what you have to do is make sure your knowledge base is
mm,
better than that. So we all have to work even harder that our knowledge and expertise in selling a product like Expedition is better than all that AI stuff and better than all these web searches. Because when guests come to talk to you about Expedition, they know where they want to go, they
mm,
know about it, but they'll have 12 questions to ask you. Who do I go with? What's the best one to
mm,
do? How long should I stay? What's a typical day like? What do I wear? What sort of price ranges? Those are the things that if you can build your knowledge up, and then it's all about that recommendation and reassurance and information and knowledge, and of course looking after all the other travel arrangements with hotels, flights, and all the
mm,
rest of it, then that would set you apart. But focus, I think, is the most important thing. And then be prepared for when they ask that question, because it must be quite scary for a young travel advisor if someone was to phone them up or walk in off
mm,
the street and say, hey, I'm thinking of going to Antarctica, tell me what I should be doing. That's quite a scary question for well,
mm,
actually, if you talk to Sarah,
mm.
let me put you on to her because she is our expert in all things expedition. And now you've given that confidence to the guest that, oh, great, I found someone who knows what they're
Mm.
talking about.
Brilliant. I also would like to remind you all listening that at the ECN, we have as well various ways to support you, from online courses to supplier courses and all that. So, and I personally think as well, one of the key important elements is to try and get yourself on board the ship. More and more expedition cruise operators recognize the value of travel advisors joining the ships and experiencing the product firsthand, because I think this is the real penny dropping moment that happens when you are able to see it with your own eyes and experience it. That really helps sell the sales. Well, thank you very much, Peter. It's been a pleasure to reconnect and hear more about your trip and share some thoughts about expedition cruising and how to sell it to the clients. And I think it's 2026 is really the year of expedition.
Yeah,
And
the
yeah.
easiest thing to do is just take a deep breath. And when the customer says to you, I'm not sure where we're going this year or next year, have you thought of going to Antarctica? And 90% of them
Yeah,
will not have thought of that. And now you're into the conversation. So just be bold enough to ask the question. And good
brilliant.
luck, because if you do sell them an expedition to Antarctica, they will absolutely love you. And your bottom line will look spectacular.
on that note, I think it's time to end this conversation. Thank you so much, Peter.
Cheerio.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Oh, sorry, there were maybe... Oh, yes, everybody's saying thank you. Thank you so much, guys. Bye.